we're going to have the Community Resources panel. We're going to have someone present from USO Transition Services, America's Warrior Partnership, and Vets for Warriors. With that, I'm going to kick it over to the first of the three presenters, Charlie Bailey. So, Charlie, take it away. Run with it, man.
All right. Hi, everybody, both here and at the outstations. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. Charlie Bailey, Senior Director of Site Development and Operations for USO, what was USO Transition Services. I will tell you, these slides were sent about a week and a half ago, and in the last week, the official new rollout has been changed. So it's the program you will hear going forward is USO Pathfinder, and I'll kind of explain a little bit of that as I move into this. But I realize we've got a few people that are presenting over the course of the next period of time, so I'll try to be as efficient as I can and leave a little time for questions on the back end. Everybody knows the USO. It's been around for 76 years, and only in the last couple of years did it decide to move into the transition space. At that point in time, they partnered with a small nonprofit outside of Fort Lewis called Rally Point 6. And over the course of the last couple of years, they opened 11 transition sites and have just recently acquired Rally Point 6 to basically help kind of spearhead their move into the transition space, if you will. So right now we have, technically we have 11 transition sites across the country that are open. 9 are at Army installations. 1 is at a Navy installation in Norfolk, and 1 is at an Air Force installation at Nellis Air Force Base outside of Las Vegas. We're getting ready to open sites at Fort Belvoir and Fort Bragg here in the next 30 to 60 days. And then we will probably have another handful, I'm going to say at this point, open inside of 2017. So before the end of the year. If you could go ahead and just click the next slide. Make sure I'm on the right one here. Go one more. Okay. So and again, the slides aren't really that relevant, but they've just sort of got how I lined up my talking points. So as everybody knows, USO is global, so there are a few organizations with a wider presence or better access to transitioning service members across the globe. The concept, and it's actually in some ways very similar to what you just heard from the America Serve side of things. The concept is really a network of networks. So at every one of our installations, we have a transition site that is developing a network of vetted resources that we can connect transitioning service members and their families to as well. One of the things that was highlighted in the last presentation that I think is really important to kind of drive home is that most people that transition off of an installation don't actually land in the local community. They're going to some other part of the country. And so having that network is absolutely critical to be able to address the needs of every single individual or family member. The other piece that's really important that we're starting to focus a lot of our attention on is OCONUS to CONUS. So our USO teams that are in the Pacific, in Europe, Southwest Asia, they've got people transitioning out of the military every day, just like the CONUS installations do. And unfortunately, very few of those folks are landing. You have Marines leaving Okinawa; they're not going to land in Okinawa. They're going to land somewhere back in the U.S. And so, having somebody, on this end, essentially doing recon on their behalf to help them land softly on this side of the Pacific or Atlantic is incredibly beneficial to that individual for both a kind of a tactical and a psychological standpoint, if you will. Go ahead, next slide, please. So one of the key pieces is that we're focused on both service members transitioning out, family members of those service members. I could tell you, I personally just transitioned out of the military. I was medically retired. It was not part of the plan. It was all related to some injuries sustained in Iraq back in 2006. Career was going in the direction I wanted it to, and a grand mal seizure took me in a different direction very, very quickly. So I had about 4 months to transition out. And the long story short is that I was transitioning out of Hawaii. Got a large family, 5 kids, and if anybody who's been stationed in Hawaii knows the cost of living is, it's up there. And so I quickly find myself, essentially overseas, trying to transition back, trying to figure out where I'm going to go, taking my family out of the life and the identity that they've, become very familiar with, and trying to find my way, back stateside. I'm very thankful for where I landed. But the point is it's not just me that's transitioning. It's the family members as well, and so there's a whole lot that goes into that. So we'll work with transitioning service members, family members, veterans, regardless of branch of service, regardless of status of discharge. Unfortunately, there's a lot of folks out there that just, whatever circumstances, they transition out, and those folks still need help. And so there are resources out there that we can point them towards to help support them. So it's a very sort of personalized approach that we take. It's a case management approach. The intent is really to try to work with every individual and tailor our approach to what it is that they need specifically. So certainly, opposite of a one-size-fits-all, intent is to identify what they need and to be able to connect them to the right vetted resources that will help them support them and help them land softly on the outside. So what we call scouts are essentially case managers, right? They're trained in a very prescribed way to be able to support every individual that walks through our doors, or handle them virtually as well, as we're beginning to take on more folks from overseas specifically. So those scouts will sit down with those individuals either in person or over the phone, gain an understanding of what their needs really are. Sometimes help them identify what their needs really are, because as we all know, it's not just about finding a job. There's a lot more that goes into that. And then helping them navigate through, that process by building an action plan that is focused on their specific needs. So, a key distinction is that we're resource connectors. We're not resource providers. And so, with that network of networks, we're identifying all of those organizations and resources that are out there that truly have the service members' best interests in mind. As you can probably all attest, there's a lot of organizations out there that claim to have the best interests in mind, but maybe they're a little bit more predatory than we would prefer. And so through our database, we use a CRM called Salesforce. We're able to document and track all of the engagement that we have with those resources, so that we can share across the network globally if we've got some predatory practices out there by a particular organization, and then we can potentially flag it if we need to. So we can always ensure that we're pointing people to the right resources. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so there are 8 focus areas, if you will, that we focus on. They're all up there. I won't read them to you. Bottom line is we're not a job board. With every one of those focus areas, there is essentially a menu of options that our scouts will have available to them. That is, in that database that we have, that they can connect them to both locally and national resources as well. It's a very holistic approach. As I mentioned earlier, people often don't realize, some of the areas that they might need help in, or maybe throughout their transition they realize that different things develop. So so we'll work through them. We'll tailor that plan and course correct as needed throughout their transition process. Go ahead, next slide, please. So this is really just a graphic depiction of kind of the process. So that one of the things I really want to kind of point out here is that we really have we have a target audience that we focus on. So just like the previous speaker was saying, you want to get ahead of the problem as much as possible. So our focus area is really 12 months pre-transition to 12 months post-transition. That being said, we'll if somebody comes in 18 months out, I mean, that's a godsend. We'll absolutely help them. I mean, that's amazing that they would do that. But oftentimes, you'll have folks coming through your doors 2 months out that are kind of in triage/crisis mode, and you got to do what you can to help them get connected and land softly. We'll then, typically work with folks up to 12 months post-transition. But what I will say is that, we're the USO. Like if there's capacity, we're going to support them. And I'll tell you, particularly up in the Pacific Northwest where I'm at, there's a huge veteran population, as probably many of you are aware. Dating back, we've got a lot of Vietnam-era folks that come through our doors, just trying to get connected and make sense out of things. And so we will absolutely work with them and help them get connected. So we've got a kind of a target demographic. USO's charter is technically for active duty. So that's really where we, try to focus a lot of our energy, and that's why we're located on those installations. But we will absolutely support, as much as possible with the capacity that we have. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is I'm not sure if everybody's got the slides out there for a resource, but this is a sort of a depiction of the process, and I'm not gonna take you through this in too much detail, but like I said, it starts with a person coming through our door or making that phone call, connecting with one of our scouts. The scout sits down with them, assesses the situation, builds an action plan with that individual service member or family member, identifies the resources that are best suited for them, and then helps them get connected to that. What I really want to show you here is the mobile action plan. So ultimately what happens is that when they go through that process, through the Salesforce platform, we're going to build them an action plan that's going to be readily accessible on their mobile device. So as I can personally attest, and I think I still have them on my iPad here, I had multiple lists and spreadsheets and everything to kind of help me, stay organized with my own transition process. That is exactly what this is designed to do. And so we can update and adjust that action plan based on whatever their needs are, and as things change throughout that transition process. So that's really what I wanted to highlight there. Okay, go ahead, next slide. I don't want to run over my time, so Tony, please. Go ahead.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, please.
Back on that last slide, I was looking at number 5. It said, I don't see it now, but it was, there you go, service member connected to the resources. How are those local community resources identified?
So that is the role of the transition site manager. So you have a site manager at every one of those transition sites. And that person's responsibility is basically to do, well, number one, it's to lead their team and help manage the caseloads that they have. But the second responsibility is basically outreach and resource identification. So we've got a lot of strategic level partnerships with larger organizations like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, as an example. But most importantly, are really those grassroots organizations. So the site manager is going to spend his or her time developing a network of resources and with organizations that are either on the installation or off the installation in that local community. And so that's what they do. And so those individuals are constantly engaging with organizations throughout that community. And then that's where kind of the network concepts comes from. So if you have somebody transitioning like off of Fort Hood, as we talked about earlier, and maybe moving to the Pacific Northwest, our transition site in the Pacific Northwest has that area largely mapped out. So we're able to have somebody on the ground in advance of that transition to help them get connected and land softly there. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. If you wouldn't mind, go ahead and skip one more.
Hey, Charlie, if I may, we have a WebEx question here from Rebecca Keogh.
Sure.
How does the USO identify resources in a community, particularly in a rural community?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, as part of the Pathfinder model, if you will, the folks that we have on the ground are trained to be able to identify resources basically across the country. So, using the Salesforce platform, I've actually got somebody that is back in the Pacific Northwest that works for me, and her role is basically to identify those organizations that are in those particular areas. So if you have, now, candidly, we don't have the entire country mapped out at this point, but we have people that are readily available to be able to identify the resources that are in, let's say, some location in Idaho where it's a smaller population. We don't have a transition site there, but we know a service member is going there. So we're going to work with that individual, and we're going to help them identify the resources that are available in that community that they are going to. But then, as this continues to grow, all of those resources will continuously be locked into or input into our database in Salesforce, so that over the course of, we're progressively building a larger network, a larger database of resources, and vetted resources, mind you. And then, we'll become increasingly more able to connect people to resources in areas where, we may not have a transition site. Okay. So the last thing I'll just say here before I hand it off is we're scaling locally, nationally, and globally. So locally, we've got the sites you see up there in green are where we have transition sites now. We are adding scouts to a number of those locations. The ones in yellow are projected transition sites for 2017. I will tell you right now, don't hold me to that, because I'm going to review and reset those here in the next couple of weeks. But I can tell you that Belvoir and Bragg are already a done deal. Jacksonville is very much on the front burner. Camp Pendleton is as well. And then I'll actually be in Georgia next week. And so I met with the Charter Center out there in Fort Stewart in Georgia, and that is one that is likely to come very soon as well. So we'll scale locally, nationally, and then I was speaking about the OCONUS piece globally as well, as we really look to provide opportunities for transitioning service members from overseas as well. So with that, I'll shut up and turn it over to y'all.
Hi, this is Andy. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for your presentation. So as I'm looking at this map, we're conversing here, seeing the opportunities across the CVEB network. We have 124 CVEBs in the network, and a lot of them may overlap with these different projections. So we just would love to make sure that in these areas that you all are connected to the CVEBs there and the co-chairs, you know, in the same vein as what we're doing here today. So it would be great to do that and talk more about that with you after today.
That would be wonderful. To be honest with you, Tony and I talked, and I mean that's part of the reason I'm here. So I would love that.
Great. All right.
Did somebody join audio from their PC? Sounds like what it is.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like when I did that the other day.
This is Eugene from Richmond, Virginia. How do you all, from a USO perspective, interact with the transitioning soldier who's concerned about the VBA type benefit, right? The BDD upon discharge? How are you all talking to this transition soldier about those VA related things?
I'm sorry.
Hey, Eugene, could you ask that one more time? We couldn't quite hear you.
I'm sorry. How is the USO dealing with or handling VA related matters? For example, as a transition service member, my concern is, you know, my disability claim, my compensation, and my candidate for BDD. Those matters is that part of your venues there as well?
Yeah, but really, what it's gonna come down to, again, we're not going to. I'm absolutely not going to have my scouts providing that, you know, that specific information, because then we're starting to lean into the resource providing side of it. So they're going to identify, you know, the POCs in that particular area that are going to be able to answer those questions specifically to help get them connected and pointed in the right direction. So we won't go down the path of you know, providing specific advice themselves, because then we start kind of dipping our toes into water that we really, you know, don't necessarily have the expertise on, and certainly don't want to lead somebody astray.
And there was one other follow-up question on WebEx. How does the USO vet those resources that follow up the last WebEx?
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, probably the biggest thing is taking a look, you know, what can those organizations provide in terms of the, you know, the metrics on what they provide, the outcomes that they've been able to provide. So, you know, oftentimes to be honest with you, now that we're a part of the USO, there are a lot of organizations that want to partner with us. And the reason is because we can provide access to a lot of folks. And that's great. It makes our lives, you know, the challenge in that is making sure that they're the right organization. So we have program experts, subject matter experts up in Lakewood in the Pacific Northwest that will actually research that organization if it's somebody that we're not already familiar with. They'll research that organization, we'll engage with them, we'll ask them to provide us the actual data on, you know, what they provide, what the metrics are in terms of success and outcomes, and then we'll also research to ensure that there's no sort of negative aspects of that organization that you know may not be as forthright about up front.
Okay, just admin note before we move on to the next speaker. We are going to cut into our lunch just a little bit, but as lunch is being provided on site, I don't think we need a full hour for lunch. And Proud Army tradition, we train to standard, not the time. So with that, we're going to continue on with Jim Lorraine.
Sure. Thank you very much. Tony, I want to thank you for putting this together and for the VA for seeing the vision to do this. America's Warrior Partnership has been a huge advocate and proponent for the CVEB programs because we believe that where veteran service occurs is at the local level, not in the Beltway, and that if you can bubble it up, that's the best way to get results rather than to push it down. So the CVEBs are fantastic, and we fully support them. I also want to point out I have one of our affiliates, and you'll see his logo here later. Roger Woodworth is here in the room with us from Buffalo. Runs the Veteran One Stop Center of Western New York. So anytime that we can highlight one of our partners is great. Next slide, please. So America's Warrior Partnership, we've been a successful community integration program since October of 12. We started out as a small community-based program that really succeeded in connecting all the dots. And then we expanded. And we are now, you can see our partners down there, Charleston, South Carolina, Panhandle of Florida, Greenville, South Carolina region. When I say these cities, they're really the regions around them. The 5 counties, except for Orange County Goodwill, which is 133,000 veterans in one county. And Roger's organization, and then one of our newest is Project Got Your Back, which is the state of Minnesota, and we're focusing heavily on Minneapolis, but we're also looking at the other communities throughout and the counties, so down to the county level in the state of Minnesota. So from the counties up. So our focus as America's Warrior Partnership and the model that we have is about relationships. And while the USO and what Charlie's talking about, I see him hit. He's the pitcher, right? Our programs are the catcher. They're the ones who work at the community levels. Their number one mission is to do outreach and engagement to all veterans, all eras, all veterans, whether they're enrolled in the VA or not. If they're not enrolled in the VA, help them get enrolled. And I have a slide about that a little bit later. But really what it's about is a community developing a relationship with their veterans, knowing who they are, knowing what they need, connecting them to the community services, measuring the results of not only the success of the veterans, but what is the community providing and where are good partners, and then continuing to move forward. I always say that it's a travesty that we're 15, 16 years into this conflict and we still haven't really figured it out. And that I think that we have an opportunity for the next generation to start now and to figure this out so that the next generation of veterans that comes through are really well connected and that we don't have to have a 15-year lag time to respond. One of the things that we operate is an affordable, scalable case coordination information system. It's a Salesforce-based platform. When I say it's affordable for the small community. So I don't know if Northampton's still on, but I lived in Holyoke. So if you take a small community and you drop Warrior Serve into it to use, you can use it at the smallest level, whether it's Northampton or South Hadley or Holyoke, or you can connect them all together. What we see is and recognize is that about 52% of the veterans live in the rural area. They need to be served just as much as the veterans who benefit from all the work that's done here in New York City in a hyper-urban area. So again, that's Warrior Serve, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. Our program educates, so what we do as America's Warrior Partnership is that we educate, train, mentor, advocate for, help raise funds for the community programs so that they can continue to move forward. And what we look for in these communities, and what we found in Roger as an example, is a leader in the community who everybody saw as a leader, including the VA, nonprofits, and businesses, all saw what they were doing. And when we did our community assessment, they said, Roger's the guy. And so we went to Roger, we convened a group. We said, we think Roger's the guy. Does everybody else agree? And they all said, yeah, Roger's the guy. And so we said, okay, let's partner with Roger and move forward with that. He's been extremely successful in Buffalo, and I will tell you that in all these communities, I just came in from California, extremely successful in Orange County. Matter of fact, the city of California, or the state of California, is wondering, how is Orange County doing so much better than everybody else, and how can we figure this out? So, next slide, please. Thanks. The way we approach this is a holistic approach. I'm a nurse by trade, Air Force veteran. The holistic approach, if you look in the middle, our whole goal is to improve the quality of life for veterans, all veterans. It's subjective, you know, but what I believe my quality of life is maybe different from everybody else around the room, but it's determined by the veteran. We see these 8 areas as the feeders, and if they're in balance, you have good quality of life. You know, if you have a job, education, employment, you have access to health care, you have all the pieces, but your family relationship is out of whack, you don't have a good quality of life. So let's focus on that, right? Our 4-step approach is really pretty basic. It's connect. Connect means develop a relationship. I'm a New Yorker, so I'm going to use my left hand and my right hand. I lived in Holyoke, but I grew up in Central New York. On my left hand, it's to connect to the veterans, to know who your veterans are and what they're looking for, connect to your community, and know where the resources are. There may be some resources that don't have great dynamic annual reports, but they do incredible work, and the community knows who they are, right? Partner with them. So that's connect to the veteran, connect to the community. Educate the veteran about all the opportunities in a holistic way, not just benefits, not just healthcare, but education, employment, housing, relationships, recreation. Connect them and educate them about those issues. Educate the community about the value of the veterans. And I think that's the conversation that's lost, is that there's a perception that veterans are a burden on the community. And that's not the case. And I'll show you a graph later. Veterans are extremely supportive and can contribute to the strength of a community, and the community needs to know that. Advocate is easy. Advocate for the veterans when they hit a barrier. In the local community, you build the relationships. They can't get an appointment in the VA. Maybe you advocate on their behalf. Sometimes it's tough to advocate on your own. It's easier when somebody else is advocating for it. Anyway, advocate for the community. I hear so many communities say, we want to be the best community in the United States for veterans. Well, you know what? You need to tell people about it. And you need to measure. You need to have a solid metrics, and tell the story, and then collaborate with everybody. And we hope we can collaborate with you, Charles. Holistic approach. Again, it's a solution-focused model. It's not a problem-focused model. It's a solution-focused model. So if you look at the wheel, you've got the issues, and what you see around the inner circle is community partners are providing the service. There is no need to duplicate services. Find the community partner that's succeeding, connect them with the veterans, ensure that they provide the services at the community level, and then move forward. And then what we look for is common measures of success. So amongst our communities, we measure the same thing in terms of output. So we're measuring apples to apples to apples to apples. So I can compare what's California doing to what's Buffalo, New York doing. And then we can see the difference. And why is Buffalo doing so well in this area, California is not, and then how do they share best practices? How do they make it work? Next slide, please. This is our evolution of a community model, integration model. To the right is what we use to look at why we serve all veterans. And I want to just talk to the graph for a second. What you see in the bottom left-hand corner are the veterans most in need. 90% of community programs are focused on that population, right? What you see in the middle box are veterans who aren't really engaged. There's not a lot of outreach to them, but I say the veterans who are in the middle, like a warrior in training and education, a fully disabled veteran, an hourly employee, they're one illness or one mishap away from slipping down the line. So our model is proactive outreach and engagement. Go out and build a relationship with the veterans in your community before the crisis occurs. Engage with them ahead of time. Build a trusting relationship. So when the hourly employee gets fired for being late because he doesn't have transportation, He tells the community group, I just got fired because I don't have transportation. The community group goes, great, let's get you transportation. And let's find a job for you. Let's get ahead of this before you start missing rent payments so you're not now homeless, right? So let's keep you from slipping down the line and keep you slipping up. The other piece that we engage with is in the top right. Community leaders, philanthropists, business owners, they want to figure out, they want to help. They want to help the community and veterans. They have the ability to pull veterans up to the top right, to keep moving them up the chain. So I offer that. Tony, we have a number of slides. Can these be made available to everybody so that they have them for reference?
Yeah, we actually have at least the vast majority of the people that are on this, we have their email addresses, so we can share these slides.
Yeah, please do. So on the left, this is what we see, non-collaborative walk-in services. It's a single one and done. People walk in, community roundtables, web-based coordinated services. And then you see it, sort of the evolution. And when a community gets to a community cultural change of veteran services to improve community programs, that's like the highest level, right? I did it in reverse, but that's where you really want to be. Where Roger is a proactive community outreach and engagement to all veterans, building a relationship, connecting them to resources. Next slide, please. What the previous slide showed you didn't represent volume. So this slide is a representation of the previous graph, but with volume. And here's what we find. Most of the veterans who are either employed or retired or in the workforce. They're not the ones who are unemployed or in school. They're not the ones who are homeless. It's the middle and the right side of the bell curve. Our community programs and where we see the opportunity is engaging all veterans across the board. Engaging the ones to the left side of the bell curve, but also those to the right side of the bell curve. There are veterans in the middle of the bell curve who are eligible for VA services, eligible for claims, eligible for community services, but more importantly, are more interested in how do I volunteer and give back, that should be engaged at a local level to leverage that. So what this provides us, and why do you serve all veterans, is that you want to find those in the shadows, the ones who aren't coming out, don't go to a walk-in clinic. We find in our survey, 63% of the veterans served by our community groups are found in outreach. 37% walk in. So if you're just a walk-in, you're missing everybody. You're missing a great majority of veterans. So we want them to go out, meet those in the shadows. I particularly have a concern about the late onset of TBI and PTS, 5 to 7 years. Somebody comes back, starts to develop signs and symptoms as it gets worse. Those are the people that are in the employment workforce. And we want to gauge them early, so when they start to see changes, especially their family, they go, something's up. I have no idea what's going on, before the person gets fired or before they start to lose what they've gained. So it's, again, that's why we believe in a leverage volunteerism, community economic impact. We measure the community economic impact in Rogers' community. Every year he has about a $26 million a year economic impact back into the community by serving veterans. It's enormous. And I don't think that the government leaders know that. Next slide, please. This is what we measure. So this is these are results as of last month. So all of our communities, we've engaged 30,000. Of that 32,000, 21,000 are post 9/11. 45% are e-benefits. 83% are enrolled in VA healthcare. We believe you've got to have access to healthcare. You got to be enrolled before you have to complain about access, right? So get you enrolled, and then we'll talk about the access. Those that are in school, 22% of all the veterans that are eligible are in school. 97% are staying in school, right? And the reason is the focus of the community group is stay in school. Tell us why you're dropping out, and we'll find a solution to keep you in school, whether it's transportation, childcare, tutoring, whatever. Unemployment rate, and then homelessness, it's again to engage those, to reduce those that are homeless, drop it by 48%, and our unemployment rate is about 10%. Next slide, please. We did a recent survey. This is what we found. So because we do whole of community veterans outreach, The number one thing veterans are looking for are recreational opportunities. I think it correlates with the third one, which is 45% networking. Improved access to healthcare is access. And then you'll see to the right, physical health treatment, that's enrollment, right? So those two are connected. Access to new employment, it's not necessarily unemployed, it's that they want a better job. And I love the last one. 36% of veterans in the communities, they want to volunteer. And they don't know where to go or who to volunteer with. So what you see is most of the veterans want to give back. Next slide, please. This is an eye chart. That's why I want to make sure it's provided. But we do something unique. When we do a survey, we assess on a hope scale. So Snyder's adult hope scale we use to assess the veterans, how they feel about themselves at that time. What we found was, and just to give, that you can see 53% feel very hopeful, they're thriving. 32% are struggling, they're looking for some issues, they're looking for some access. On the top, the thriving veterans are looking for a VA claim. That's what they're seeking from the communities. And then it makes sense. Networking, unemployment, financial counseling, not assistance, financial counseling. Now go to the bottom. Those are the stuck veterans. These are the ones who have the lowest hope. The number one thing they're looking for the second year in a row is transportation. They can't get to healthcare, they can't get to home, they can't get to the job. They don't have transportation. And then it makes sense. VA claim, networking, housing, it sort of makes sense what you'd see with somebody who's got low hope. Next slide, please. We feel that our communities are doing great stuff. So if you see 2016 survey on the right, 2017 survey, 93.6% of the veterans feel supported by their community. And that's what it's about, right? If you feel supported by your community, if you feel like this isn't the end of the road, you feel like there's somebody to help you, this is a great approach. And Roger's, I'm glad Roger's here because he has exemplified this, as have the other communities that we work with. Next slide, please. As I said, we use Warrior Serve. It's built by community advocates for community advocates. It's not built by technology people. It's built by folks so when you do the intake and you populate it, there are workflows built into it that help you develop cases to refer out and identify issues. We have a red algorithm that identifies veterans into a red, yellow, green area. If they're red, it goes straight to the director of the program because they are an immediate engagement. We have two questions that are you able to bounce back from adversity? 5.5 scale. And are you able to adapt when changes occur? If they say, I strongly disagree, there's somebody we immediately engage and say, what's going on? How can we change this? You've got to have better optimism. Let's figure this out. We see that as a high risk for suicide or others. But it populates it automatically. It's not something you put in. It's through the questioning that you achieve it. Again, it's a Salesforce-based platform. It's scalable down to the smallest community. That's what we really like about it. So if you have a community of 26,000 people, that'll work. This will work in it, and it'll scale up to Orange County, California, with 133,000 veterans. It networks to other community partners, so it does the same thing, and you can shrink it or expand it. It's up to you. How are the programs vetted? How are the organizations vetted? They're vetted by the community program, and then we measure performance on the back end. So they may be somebody who's really highly vetted, but they don't perform. They may not be part of the network at a later date. It's really performance-based. Next slide, please. And I want to make a pitch. We have an annual symposium in Atlanta, September 6th through the 8th. I invite everyone to attend. You can go to our website to find it. We have 500 to 600 individuals show up. Usually about 300 nonprofit and government organizations come together to figure out what everyone's doing. We want the CVEBs there because we want CVEBs to meet other community groups and what are they doing, and to help you network all of them. And I'm out of time.
Awesome. Great. Hey, do we have, before we move to the next presenter, any questions out there from any of the remote sites? Herndon, Boxborough, Pittsburgh. Okay, Boxborough has a question. Go ahead.
Fine, go ahead.
Where?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we're live.
Hi, this is Phil again in Massachusetts. My question for the last gentleman was, his numbers, what community was he getting that data from?
That was all 5 of the communities. So that was Charleston, Greenville, South Carolina, Buffalo region, Orange County, California, and the Panhandle of Florida.
So those
They
percentages.
send out.
Okay.
Yeah, so they send out the survey, and then we coalesce it, and then each of them we then do the analysis and send it back to each of the communities so they understand what's happening in their community. Did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so we can then, again, through the survey, compare what's going on in Orange County, California, to what's going on in Buffalo, to Charleston, South Carolina, as compared to Greenville, South Carolina. Thanks for the question, Nate. Welcome, Northampton.
Okay, anybody else? Herndon, Pittsburgh, RTP, Richmond.
Yes.
Okay, we don't have any WebEx questions sitting right now. Hey, just a quick admin note, 3:35 is our target for, we're gonna have a dedicated, time slot just for, discussion and last, question and answer period. So if we don't get to anything right now, we will circle back to that at the end of the day. So we're not intentionally ignoring any questions. With that, I'm gonna turn it over to, Major General Retired Mark Graham, is gonna talk about Vets for Warriors. Sir, all yours.
Thanks, Tony and Jim, for setting this up. Thanks, Jim and Charlie, for what you're doing. And frankly, thanks for the VAs for doing this and hosting these. And the CVEBs, these are excellent. And for all the organizations that are participating now and that are going to talk later, I think as we can all see, there's a lot of people doing a lot of hard work for one reason, and that's to help serve our nation's military and veterans and their families. Vets for Warriors is like you're hearing before. We're a strength-based organization. Next slide. I'm going to peel through these pretty fast, but I'll tell you a few key things. One is we are who we serve. We're a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week peer support program. We never shut down. When you call, a veteran answers the phone within 30 seconds. Currently, our average time to answer is 9.5 seconds. We say 30 because we don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. We're a confidential program. So 24 hours a day, anyone can call. If they've ever worn the uniform of our nation, currently or in the past, or they're a family member or caregiver of anyone who is, they can contact us and talk to a veteran live. But what we are is peer support. So we often say we're here to help, not judge. Because we tell folks when they come in, when the veteran peers come in the morning, when they come in the evening, whatever their shift is, this is a stigma-free zone. So when you walk in the door, it doesn't matter why they're calling, but they're calling a confidential line for a reason. They might be calling for something that seems like a small thing, but we all know underneath that small thing something else is going on, or they wouldn't have reached out and called us. We're a national/international global program. People contact us from all over. You can get to us on our phone system. You can also call, you can contact us through the website, through live chat. You can also hit us with email and texting. So you can get us a lot of different ways. I had an email from someone at 3:25 this morning, got it to the supervisor on shift, and he's reaching out to the veteran right now. So somebody's always on, and that's the key thing about 24 hours a day. And I would offer that to all the programs that are out here. One is, I suspect some of your folks have to sleep. We don't sleep because we've got someone there all the time. Our veterans are employed. We hire veterans, train them to do this work. This is a clinically based model that we're using. I'll show you. It's called reciprocal peer support. It's 4 steps. There's 4 tasks. It's built into our software, so it's a conversation. When they contact us, we don't ask them 20 questions like some places do that. We don't do that. We don't ask them. Frankly, you don't even have to give us your name. That's not important to us. What's important to us is, are we helping you? Are we giving you whatever you need? We connect to other organizations. You've heard a lot of these, the pitcher, the catcher. You know, while you're doing that, I'm racking my brain thinking, what are we? I don't know, maybe the groundskeepers? I'm not sure. But I think what's important is, and I'll say this, and some of you all know this, But if money wasn't part of this whole process, collaboration would be unbelievable. But because funding gets involved, what I tend to see is some organizations start doing this. So what we're trying to do is break the barriers of rice bowls and be the soy sauce in everyone's rice bowl. And I know that sounds kind of cheesy, rice, cheesy, but it's not. The idea is we can take calls and we can connect them we're already connected to Transition 360 with Kylie and team. We're working with AWP. They're not on our slide yet, but after today, I'm hoping to get them there so we can formally get that going. We just want to be able to answer the phone and talk, because here's what we do. We might connect you to one of the organizations in the community, because we believe it's all about community. I think it's 45, and Lloyd Deans is here with me. Lloyd is one of our supervisors. One of the things we find out amazingly is how many of our veterans that call us who don't want to be part of the VA end up being connected to the VA because they're talking to a veteran who's helped coach them into that and helps connect them. Oh, it's too hard. Let me make the call for you then. Let me help you out. So we connect them. We still have veterans that call that do not know who their VSO is, have never been to a vet center. So we find a lot of those things out. So we're not trying to keep a hold of all these callers. The idea is it's much like, and I haven't flipped the slide yet. I got about 12 of them, and I haven't gone to the next one yet. But the idea is think of a moving sidewalk. On a moving sidewalk, some callers are on the left-hand side where you keep walking. Some callers call in, they want to talk to you once, that's it, good, thanks, just want to talk to you, having a crappy night, want to talk to somebody. They want to talk to a veteran, they want to talk to them live. See, the idea is we're not a crisis line. We're a peer support line. The Veterans Crisis Line is there to help in crisis. Now, we do crisis calls. We're certified to do that, and we take about 3% of our calls are crisis calls. So we do crisis calls. We have a licensed clinician on site 24 hours a day. So we do those calls. But the idea is we want to help these veterans before they reach the point of crisis. Let's connect you to community-based resources. Let's connect you to organizations like you just heard from that do wonderful work. And here's what happened. Well, as we start connecting people to resources, the team goes, "Hey, sir, but we're a peer support group." I said, "Yeah, let's see how many of the callers, once we connect them to another organization, want us to continue to follow up, calling them back." I was stunned. In my slides, you can go ahead and flip slides. I'm not in the slides, but just flip one. Yeah, leave it right there. Over 60%, you can go back one. Over 60% of those that we connect to another resource, another organization, want us to call them back. So I said, "Gosh, that seems awful high to me, And I'm an artilleryman by trade, so I said, you need to go back and check your data." Actually, I told Lloyd this. I said, "Look, you guys need to go back and check your data. That seems pretty high to me." And he came back to me and said, "Actually, it's 71. We were just trying to be kind of conservative." So I was stunned by that, frankly, because 78% of those that contact us are veterans or retirees. The nice thing about it is active duty has a lot of different resources. But when you're active duty and you call us, it's nice because as you transition, we're still there. We talk to you. All of our veterans have transitioned. They all get it. They've all been through a lot. 75% of our veteran employees are combat veterans. We have Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, male, female, and we cover every era from Vietnam through those conflicts all the way up to Iraq and Afghanistan, to include conflicts that were not declared wars. So we don't qualify anyone that calls. We're here for everybody. I'll go through. Can you go back one slide? Go back another one. Yeah, there you go. You'll see around that's a picture of, went forward, right there. And if you see the picture, it's a collage in the middle. Those are our pictures of our peers. They get to put one on there. Anybody that gets as good picture as me, you get the prize. But you'll see the 4 words around the slide. Those are the 4 tasks that we use for reciprocal peer support. Now, they're in no particular order. When you call in, the veteran starts talking to you, he connects, and they engage, and then there's a lot behind these slides. There's a lot behind these items. Sheree Castellano developed this 19 years ago, and it's been being used. We do 8 peer programs in our call center. This is our national program / international program. Next slide. So you can't read this as another eye chart, but you can see we've got the top 10 states listed up there that they contact us. They call from all over. You can see the conflicts, and if you add them all up, you'd see Iraq and Afghanistan quite a few. Over 50% of our callers are post 9/11. but we are starting to see an increase in Vietnam-era callers. We have 4 Vietnam-era veterans in our call center. Here you go. 2 of them were in Vietnam and in OIF. Yeah,
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Hi.
Is it a hard
Can
question?
you go, I'm gonna make it hard, yes. No, I'm the soft person. Can you go back
Oh,
one
good.
slide? If you go back one slide, I just, something, so I really like that last bullet, how you're leading the country in best practice and peer support. And VA does do and have a peer support program, but I'm wondering, so what are you benchmarking against to know that, this is a best practice? Can you talk about that for a second?
And in 2011, DOD recognized our peer support model that we also use as the best practice by the Defense Center of Excellence.
Awesome.
And what you'll find is in February 2014, as the VA's peer support program was just coming on board, they came to our call center and met with us, and we had an really good meeting with them. It didn't go anywhere because the VA didn't want to part, whatever. The difference in the VA peers and our peers are the peers in the VA, they're on the ground, part of the treatment team, and they're consumer peers. They have to say they've gone through a treatment program. Our peers do not. We lead with strength. You serve, I serve. Let's talk. What's going on? And I can give you example after example of them. What we'd like to do is be able to connect our callers to peers on the ground. We had a caller one time that called us and said, actually, he called me. He called, talked to a peer. He said, I'm going to talk to whoever's in charge. That's typically not a good thing. But he said, I just want to tell you how well your peer did. And I said, well, that's nice to know. Thanks. He said, one of the things I really like about the program here is I wanted to talk to someone I didn't know and I was never going to meet. Kind of like somebody on an airplane, right? You tell them all this stuff and you go, God, I can't believe I told the person all that stuff. So what we do find, though, is sometimes they want to talk to a peer on the ground. Not everyone does, some do. So what we like to do is be able to connect them to other programs that have peers, because other programs have peers on the ground, too. So we'd like to be able to connect them to those peer programs. Because we're not afraid of losing them. We want to get them into the right place. We want to get them the help they need, the care they need, the job, whatever they need. So that, to us, that's very important to work with the VA peers, and I wish we could formalize that relationship better, and maybe after today we can do that. Because it's all about working together as far as we're concerned. And I'll show you a slide on collaboration that shows that. Next slide. I hope that answered that question.
Yeah, I would love that to be an after action. Tony, if you can help with that, to have a meeting after this, obviously not today, but to just make sure we have that collaborative partnership with you from the VA side and get something on the calendar to talk to our peer support office and collaborate. I think that'd be a good idea. If you're open to that.
Okay. Great, thanks. And this slide just shows you a few other things. It shows kind of like Jim did when he talked a few minutes ago. It shows you some demographics. We're getting better at doing data and collecting data and everything. So it shows you just some data. You can see that when you see the slides. Next slide. We're very collaborative, work with a lot of people. And now, the point about the moving sidewalk, I'll get back to that. It says over 2,900. That means today, right now, that we are actively talking to over 2,900 veterans or service members or family members. That number continues to change as the sidewalk moves. On an airport moving sidewalk, some people, again, walk down the left side. They get on and off pretty quick. But a lot of people walk on the right side, and they don't walk, they stop. And they let the sidewalk move, right? Well, there's a capacity for that sidewalk. We've not reached our capacity. We can take more calls. And then people, when they walk the other sidewalk. So when you call us and contact us, we talk to you, we engage with you. We average talking to those that call us between 4 to 5 months, and the average number of time we talk to them is probably 6 to 12 different times. Once you contact us, we call you back. We say, Jim, thanks for calling. What's going on? So we talk. Hey, Jim, I'd like to give you a call back. When's a good time for you? Jim goes, Thursday evenings is the best for me. Okay. I'm not on shift Thursday evening, but somebody's going to call you back Thursday evening, and we'll go from there. And Jim goes, okay. And so it's when it's convenient for you, not us, because we're always there. We cover all the time zones. So we ought to put it into our cloud-based phone system, and it pops up when that peer enters when they log in that night, it pops up and says you got 19 calls to make that night, or 12, or however many they've got to make that day. So they make those calls. So we keep a connection. Our tagline is discover the power of connection. Because it's all about connecting in many ways to people, to organizations, to communities, just tons of folks. So that's the left-hand side. Notice the 5 reasons for calls. On a previous slide, you'll see that we had 10 of them listed, but it's hard to read. Those 5 top reasons stay somewhere in the top 5 almost all the time. Isolation is the number one. Isolation is the number one. Anxiety, relationships, depression, and post-traumatic stress. And it's interesting. I think post-traumatic stress would be higher, but many people don't say that. Depression might be higher, but many people don't say the word depression. But they'll say anxiety. Our organization is under, my boss is the head of the University of Behavioral Healthcare. So we're a mental health organization, and that's what we started, and that's why we do this peer support model the way we do it. But what we realized is a lot of callers want us to connect, and when we started connecting to other organizations, we found they still want that connection. So you might connect them to another organization that's helping them out in the community, and they get a call back, and guess what they want to do? They just want to talk to you about it. Because they can trust you. Remember, we're confidential. We don't tell their boss, their employer, their neighbors, their friends. It's the stigma. And we're working on it. It's getting better. I think it is, but I think there's still work to do. And I think it's so important to know that when you talk to somebody and they know they can just talk to you and not have to worry that you're going to tell somebody else, they can share so much of it. The clinicians that work here are shocked at the amount of the things these callers tell our peers in the first phone call. I mean, we had a clinician, our head clinician just retired about a year and a half ago. She'd been a clinician for 40 years. She goes, I've never seen anything like it. She said, they wouldn't tell us that in 4 sessions. And they just open up. It's because, hey, you served, I served, let's talk. So again, example after example of people that they connect to. Next slide. And these are kind of hard to read a little bit here, but one of the things I think is important, and I changed this slide yesterday, just because I've been wanting to make this point, and I just kind of haven't done it. But on the right, you'll notice what I got on the right. There's enough work for everyone to collaborate. And collaboration is key, but there's enough work for everyone. I mean, there really is. There's so much work to do and so many out there that we can help. We really need to do things just like you're doing here to bring everybody together. We do about 900 to 1,000 calls a week, incoming, outgoing. Remember our model set up that we do incoming calls and then we follow up, so we do a lot of outgoing calls. The good news is we can control when we do outgoing calls, so that makes our veteran aid peer agents available to take incoming calls, right? And then on the left, we can help connect to the VA and other services. What we find is not only do we help connect them to the VA and other organizations, what we also find is we help them make the care better. I'll give you an example. A Marine called one time and was really struggling. So as the Marine's talking to the peer, this Marine, the listener opened up and the peer just started talking. So the Marine pretty soon said, well, it's hard for me to talk to anybody because, I'm a Marine, I'm supposed to be tough and all this. And so the peer goes, well, I'm a Marine too. She goes, oh, you are? It was a female Marine. She goes, you are? He goes, yeah. She goes, oh. So then she just opened up and started telling him all kinds of things. And he said, do you have someone? Are you seeing someone? Do you have a clinician? She goes, well, I have a psychiatrist, I have a clinician, but they're not military, so they wouldn't understand. And he goes, I got to tell you, I disagree with you. Remember, peers can do this. Clinicians couldn't say some of the things. He goes, don't be like me. Don't be like me, the peer told her. He goes, I waited years to go get help. And he goes, and my family fell apart. And he goes, but my life's back on track because I went and got help. I talked to somebody. I went and got help. And he goes, I'm doing so much better now. So I think we can help them not only get into care, those who aren't in care yet, but those that are in care, help them make that care even better by helping them know it's okay to open up. They don't have to be a veteran clinician to be able to help you. There's a lot of wonderful people that are out there that are clinicians that do great work, but you got to tell them. You got to open up and let them help you. So I think that's another key thing. Next slide. And the other one is, we've done over 225,000 contacts. It's been around. We've been around a little over 5 years now. This just shows you some things. We were with DOD for a while, but they changed the way they wanted to do some things. But so we can do about 60,000 calls a year. We'll be over 50,000 again this year. So we have some capacity. The good news is the more calls we get, the more we grow, the more veterans we have to hire to work the lines. So it's kind of a win-win, right? So for those that are doing employment, let people know about us. We're based out of New Jersey. We're in Piscataway, New Jersey. Is where the call center is. And we're a call-centered environment. We're there together because our peers have all been through stuff too. They've all served, and we have a clinician on site all the time, so they all help each other and work with each other. We have a software system that we use to keep track of resources. So we do it. But what's key for us is instead of us trying to track 1,000 different resources around the nation, what we really like to do is connect organizations that do that very, very well. And then that way we know you're vetting those resources and we're connecting them to you because you've got somebody in the communities on the ground working it where you can do great care. So we love that. We love that connection. Next slide. I promised you that we collaborate and integrate with a lot of people. This is just a small example of the ones we're working with. A couple of you in the room might see your name on there. So we work with a lot of different folks. And again, that's not everyone. We work with a lot of different organizations. And we want to continue to grow. We want to continue to grow that because it's so important. Next slide. Yeah, I think we can impact more lives together. Next slide. I got 3 slides. I'll run through them in about 2 minutes unless Tony throws something at me. And these are reciprocal peer support. I am not a clinician. I'm an Army guy. I'm a soldier for life. But I want to make sure I talked a little bit about reciprocal peer support. Or Roy would go back and tell Cherie, and she'd go, man, this is a really interesting model. And we use it on all of our programs, and we customize the drop-down menus based on the population. We have a program in our call center called Mom to Mom. And that program is for mothers with special needs children. So if you're a mom or a dad, because we do have a dad on the line, if you're a mom or a dad, and you have a special needs child, 51% of those that contact us have a child on the autism spectrum, you can contact us and talk to another parent who has a child with special needs. So that's one of the lines. That line uses the same model that we use for all the lines. Vets for Warriors is included. We use that same model. It works. It's been working for 19 years, and it continues to grow. We have another line called Care to Caregiver for those that are caring for someone with dementia and Alzheimer's. Those are New Jersey-based programs. Vets for Warriors is our national program. But I wanted to make sure you saw a little bit about the model. I mean, we just didn't, a bunch of military guys didn't just make this up. You know, clinicians were behind all this, setting all this up, making this right. Slide. Yeah, those are the 4 tasks. I mean, it's pretty simple. I showed them to you before the last slide. Last slide. Now, you know, interestingly enough, I was talking, I think it was Mike that was sitting over here before from Cornell, right? My daughter's a nurse at Weill Cornell, by the way. It's the New York Presbyterian. She's working right now.
Smart girl.
Yeah. So she's a PACU nurse, and she loves it, by the way. But I think this slide's interesting because the word stress is real big over there, right? Because some stress is good, but some stresses are not good, and a lot of stress is not necessarily good. But look at the center bottom. Because earlier I was laughed when he said about, you know, one size fits all. Because we agree, one size does not fit all. You need a lot of options. The key is, how do we help make this less confusing for those in the military as they separate and become veterans? We connect them. So, to me, one of the things we are is a peer support network. People can call us, and we can then connect them to other resources, and we can connect them into care. Remember, Give an Hour, we're partnered with Give an Hour and others. Some will say they don't want to go to the VA. They want to go. So we'll offer community-based resources. We typically go VA first because we're trying to get them to. The VA does a lot of great work. So I think you'll find that one size doesn't fit all. So one person might call and say, "Yeah, I just can't get into the VA. I'm trying to figure it out." So we'll help them. Because remember, a lot of our callers are struggling. So even though the system might be there for them, they just can't manage through it. So we help them with that. We kind of go the extra mile for the caller, if you will. Like many programs do, but we really do. And one size doesn't fit all, I think, is a really key thing to make sure we all know that we got to be careful not to put cookie cutters on our programs. And we got to make sure we give them a lot of options. Slide. So that's my last slide. Discover the power of connection, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about Vets for Warriors. And thank each and every one of you for the work you're doing to help America's veterans and their families and those serving. Thanks.
There you go. Thanks.
All right, what questions do we have out there for our community resources panel before we break for lunch? We can't eat lunch until we have at least one question from one of those remote sites that has not asked something yet. I was between you and lunch. Now, while you guys are thinking of your question, I don't have a question. I just have an observation. The Veterans Experience team pretty much knows this because I talked about it at our last face-to-face training. But about 15 years ago, when I was promoted to major, it was Colonel Graham that promoted me at that time. So one of our peers, somebody that knew that, had a question for Vets for Warriors, and I just want to sort of, I don't know, give a paid not unpaid political advertisement that when I called on their behalf, they did exactly what he described. The call was answered probably within less than 10 seconds, and they kept following up with me until they knew that situation was resolved. So although I did not personally have need for the services, I did see how proactive they were in following up, sir. All right, so good to hear. So
I'd love to have a follow-up discussion, perhaps sometime in the future. I co-administer the Joseph Dwyer Veterans Care Support Program. We're in 16 counties. Well, we initially in Suffolk County, where I'm coming from, on Long Island. We're now in 16 counties throughout New York State, and a lot of what we're employing, we could have been speaking from the same script on much of this. Where we differ just a bit is that we're doing the hands-on. We're going out at midnight and having that pot of coffee at the diner with the veteran. We're conducting weekly group meetings across the county, across the state, and peer is well established now as an evidence-based practice. It is effective, it works, and we're not cops, we're not priests, and we're not judges. We're veterans, vet to vet. So I would welcome the opportunity to have a conversation with you on what we're doing.
And Buffalo has the Clear program out.
And we've got it in two counties.
And then the Clear Path has got
in 23 counties.
Great.
Wow, great. And I mean, there are a lot of others, so it'd be great when they contact us, when we know what we are, we can fill up on some of them.
Yeah. I got a question. Yeah, this is RTP. Moses Gloria from the Raleigh Vet Center has a question, sir. Yeah, so I have a question about your peer-to-peer counselors and stuff like that. How are they trained, one? And are there physical peer-to-peer counselors at each of the states, like so they can actually like physically talk to somebody, or is it just strictly online chat or phone conversations?
No, we don't have anyone in the States. We have ambassadors out there now that help us get the word out. One of our number one challenges is getting the word out because the callers aren't telling other people they're calling. If you go to a good restaurant, you might tell your friends, but if you're calling a peer support line because you're struggling, you're likely not to tell other people.
Now, is there a way to get a list of those ambassadors so we can link up ourselves, community outreach-wise, to get them tapped in?
Absolutely. Right now we're doing some. We've never done rebranding yet, and we've never really done a marketing campaign. So we're refreshing a brand new website. We're doing all that. We're doing all those things. All the ambassadors will be on there, and you'll be able to get to them and contact them. But if you contact Vets for Warriors, we can connect you to the ambassador that you're looking for in your area.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And then the other question I think you had was our training. So we hire the employees. We vet them first, hire them. Once we do the interviews and we hire because not everyone can do this work. I mean, not everyone can do this work. So we hire them and we put them through 40 hours of formal training. That's in addition to all the other stuff they have to do. But that includes a lot of other mandatory training they have to do just to be part of the organization. So they go through 40 hours of training. That training is all run by clinicians and then some of our real experienced peers. And then once they finish the 40 hours, then they don't start taking calls yet. They sit with another experienced peer over a period of time, sometimes 1 to 2 weeks, depends, until we feel comfortable, until the supervisor and the clinician both say, okay, he or she, they're ready to take calls on their own. So we work them, and as they come on, we work them on the day shift, the evening shift, and the night shift so they can get used to different types of calls. Most calls come in between 9 at night and 3 o'clock in the morning. So we have fewer peers on during the day than we do in the evening, just because we have some people that are really good looking at data and when the call volumes. We adjust our shifts based on that. But the training's formalized. We're also American Association of Suicidology certified. So we screen for HI and SI.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
What has your experience been in terms of veterans making the initial contact directly or a family member making the initial contact on behalf of the veteran?
It's typically the veteran contacted direct. We do have some family members that call. We've had a grandmother that called, was worried about her grandson because he was on Facebook and he was in Korea and she was worried about him. So we went through the Army and got the chain of command involved and they found him. And young man was struggling, but he was doing, getting help. And the chain of command did a great job helping him out. And he sent it back to his grandmother and said, Grandma, Please don't do that again. But he did feel good. He did feel good that, that he found out his unit really cared. They didn't beat him up. They didn't kick him out. They helped him.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else in the room? Any further questions? Anybody out there from the other remote sites? We still have no WebEx questions?
Hey, hi Mark, hi Jim, it's Christy from Code Support Foundation. How are you?
Good. Hi, Christy.
Good. Just a quick question. As you guys know, we have a case coordination program where we have veteran and caregiver peer navigators that work directly with troops, veterans, and families across the country. It's all done virtually. And of course, we have that peer aspect to it that you're talking about, but then they also take on this role of coordinating these typically multiple resources needed to really get to the holistic outcomes we're looking for. So Mark, I know you mentioned that, I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly, that when you all are doing your referrals, that you are looking for organizations like ours that already have those embedded resources and have a network, as opposed to trying to find those resources that like your peers Googling or something like that. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we have resources that we've found over the years that we get good feedback on, because what we do is, so the short answer is yes. We ask those callers, as we call them back, and we connect them to resources, we ask them, hey, how did it go when you went to that organization? How did it go? And if they say, they weren't so great, well, we certainly make a note of that and keep track of that. So we have a resource that we've had several people tell us that it's not going well, we stop referring to them. So what we like to do is plug in organizations who have solid, vetted resources in the communities, because if you're local in the community, you better know than anyone who's good and who's not. So that's even better.
And Christy, you have Patriot Link that you vet, right?
Yeah, so I was going to say we have a technology platform that we've developed called Patriot Link. That's a cloud-based resource navigation platform. It's been funded by Crystal Myers-Squibb Foundation. And what we've taken on as a national organization has been to identify direct service resources that are fiscally transparent, financially responsible, have capacity, are responsive to clients, and so we're collating all that data now. We've got about 600 organizations and about 4,000 programs. And what we're looking at, the 40,000 number that people bat around, a lot of nonprofits that are out there, when you do a deeper dive into that number, as we have over the past 4 years, we recognize only about 3,000 to 5,000 of them are actually providing a direct service. So that makes it a much more manageable set. So we're piloted with like Red Cross, the National Guard Family Assistance Centers. Anybody who wants to be a pilot site, let us know. We're trying to get it out as many sites as possible. But the goal is by the time we launch broadly next spring, we'd like to have at least 2,000 of those 3,000 to 5,000 resources. And Jim, as you said, what we do is as we go out into communities to pilot, we ask for their resource list. So that way you start to get granularity in the platform, and you get both national resources, which we started with the local resources. And then Code of Support is responsible for keeping all the data up to date, making sure it's vetted, data hygiene. I have a whole team of people that do it. And so I'm offering to any of you all who are interested in that platform, getting it fully funded right now. Hopefully I can continue that so there's no cost. But we are looking to get it out as many kinds of communities and organizations as possible. Rural, urban, small, large, need feedback on it. And hopefully when we go broad with it, it will really help people connect resources to need. Thanks, Jim.
Okay, and we do.
Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to add, in similar to what I said earlier with gentleman earlier today, anything like this, like VA definitely wants to collaborate with this type of project. And, Jim, Lauren, we're coordinated with you already. And all of you really we're trying to. So where we can build those relationships and see where you all are spreading or trying to spread across the country, we want to be connected with you in that effort from CVEB. So for events like this, outreach, helping vets navigate, finding the vets, that's a big thing we hear all the time. How do we find veterans once they leave the service post 6 months? DOD doesn't have the funding anymore to track them, and unless they're enrolled or pre-enrolled in VA, we can't find them either. So we need to work together to solve this and find all 22 million vets right now. So let's collaborate, and this is just the start of, I think, more conversations and connections we need to have after this today.
And I should probably say that Patriot Link is service provider facing, and so the idea is if we have in the Catholic Charities and community-based organizations that don't necessarily know that much about the VA, but if they have those resources in front of them, they can start pushing them back into the VA and vice versa. We really want to try to get it in places that typically the social service providers aren't aware of the services that the VA or other organizations, because so many of the family members in particular are getting their help from community-based resources because they don't get a lot of support from the VA.
Hence, that is why I wanted the point to earlier that what we're looking at is the VA becoming part of the community, part of the CVEB, and why we are so encouraged in being welcomed into the CVEB. And I've used this amongst my North Atlantic team quite often, and I've shared it quite a bit. As I look at the CVEB, what I look at them to be is the nucleus in a community, or the nucleus in a city. And therefore, all of the organizations come together. And when we all do come together in a community, to include the VA. Right. You know, this is grassroots. Look for the community to run it, but we want to be welcome to the dinner table, so to speak.
Right.
But at that point, when everyone comes together, we can eliminate some of the duplication of efforts, some of the duplication of the energy put towards that, maybe direct that energy in other ways where it'll support the community, but equally as important that we become a force multiplier to reach out to our veterans who are not in the VA yet,
right,
for whatever reasons, but we look for them to come in and support us. So that nucleus thought becomes the heart of a community supporting its veterans, and that's one of our goals.
And I think that that's so important. And Jim mentioned the duplication of effort. Sometimes you have to have redundancy. I get that. But one of the cool things about Patriot Link too is because you have to have a unique login, because it's service provider facing. On the back end, we collect all searches run. So 2 years from now, when it's broadly deployed, I'm going to be able to say something like, you see a hotspot in Boston because service providers, 80% of them are searching for legal. So not only do we see that as a national organization that we can share with our partners and up at the VA level, but each local organization has their own dashboard. So they can go to their own policymakers and funders and say, hey, listen, this is what we're looking for every month, and this is what we're not finding. And hopefully by having all those things mapped, we'll be able to see those gaps.
Just to say a last comment on that duplication of efforts. What I want to ensure is that in the communities that we're not, I'm okay with duplicating efforts as long as they're mutually complementary to each other.
Right.
What I fear is that I don't want them to be competing for resources or competing against each other. So I'm looking for us to support each other as opposed to different organizations having the same efforts and trying to get the same resources.
And a veteran trying to navigate that.
No, right, exactly. It becomes more confusing.
Right, yeah.
But if they come to the nucleus, there's an organization such as our co-chairs in New York City, you can say, hey, this is where we're going to go. Exactly. And this is where we can support you. Thank you. Thank you all.
I just wanted to, I didn't say it during the presentation, but I'm proud that all of our affiliated communities are CVEB leads, and that they're using that and partnering with the VA through the CVEBs, and it's worked well. And I would offer to any CVEB that's from the smallest community to a larger, that we're interested in helping you, and we have as I said, a model that can scale down to Northampton, Massachusetts. Thanks.
All right, last question. This is a WebEx question from Lori Barone out there in Rogers, neck of the woods out of Buffalo. Sir, the training for Vets for Warriors, is this certified by the Board of Behavioral Health Examiners?
I don't know.
Don't know, okay.
I don't know. I mean, I'll ask our clinicians to find out. I mean, all of our clinicians are licensed, and, they're all part of all those organizations, but I'll.
Gotcha.
We're part of the University of Behavioral Health Care, which is part of Rutgers, so I suspect it's, the clinicians, it's all squared away.